We're talking about Pat Metheny's solos on Bright Side's Life, both the original 1976 version, as well as the version from 2000 on the Trio Live record. This should be really interesting. So before we get into Pat's actual solos on this tune, let's start off by taking a look at some of the general harmonic language we can use over these chord changes. So the first thing to know is that even though the tune starts off with a G major 7 sharp 4 chord, the tune really is in the key of D. So when we're starting off with this chord, we're already on the 4th degree of the scale. But you can see why that C sharp works so well in this chord. The C sharp in the case of the G major 7 sharp 4 is also the major 7th of the D. So, over the first chord, a G Lydian sound works really well because it includes the raised 4th of the G, which is the C sharp. So that G Lydian mode is really perfect to use over this first chord in the tune. And then as well, when we get to the B flat major 7 sharp 4, we can just go up and play a B flat Lydian scale. Before I forget, if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell as well. So now we can also think in terms of minor pentatonic scales against these chords. So for that first chord, the G major 7 sharp 4, we have a couple choices as far as the pentatonic scales we can use. One of the basic things we can do is we can go up a major 3rd and use B minor pentatonic. There's a chord, and here's the B minor pentatonic scale. And you can see that this scale works really well because it has the basic chord tones. It has the B, which is the major third of the G. It has a note D, which is the fifth. It has the F sharp, which is the major seventh. But it also has a couple of color tones. We have the ninth, which is the note A, and we have the 13th, which is the note E. And then for the B flat major 7 sharp 4 chord, we can as well go up a major third from that and use the D minor pentatonic. All right, so those are some basic minor pentatonic scales we can use. Another minor pentatonic scale we can do, though, is we can go down a half step from the chord. So in the case of the G major 7 sharp 4, we can just go down a half step and use an F sharp minor pentatonic scale. And the nice thing about that one is that it's even more colorful than the B minor pentatonic scale. And you can see why that is. The F sharp minor pentatonic includes the sharp 4, as well as those other color tones that we had before, the A and the E, or the 9th and the 13th. So in the case of the F sharp minor, we have F sharp, which is the major 7th of the G major 7 sharp 4 chord. We have the note A, which is a 9, B, which is the major 3rd, C sharp, which is the sharp 4 or sharp 11, the E, which is the 13th, and then again we have F sharp, which is the major 7th. You can hear that's a really nice, colorful scale to use against the G major 7 sharp 4. And as well against the B flat major 7 sharp 4, we can go down a half step and grab that A minor pentatonic. Now let's take a look at the last 4 bars of the A section. So the first A section, the last 4 bars are a D major chord to D major over C, going to B flat major 7 sharp 4 to G over A. So when we hit that D major chord, we can think either in terms of D major, primarily like a D major triad, but we can also start thinking in terms of D mixolydian here. So using the flat 7 of the scale, the C. We can also think of a D blues sound over this. And sometimes it's also nice to use both the minor third and the major third to do a bluesy kind of thing like this. And this first A section goes to a B flat major 7 sharp 4. And over this we can use some of the same harmonic language that we talked about before with the Lydian scale or those minor pentatonics. And then here we end up on a G over A. And what's interesting here is that this G over A, it sort of gives us a hint that we're going back to D major. It sounds like it wants to go. However, going into the second A, it's going to a G major. So it's kind of like a deceptive cadence. Because of this, when we get to that G over A, we can use an A mixolydian sound, like an A7 scale. Because like I said, that chord really starts to sound like it wants to go back to that D major. So an A mixolydian scale would resolve really well into a D major. Of course, as we know, we're going to lead back to a G major 7 sharp 4 sound. Now for the bridge, we have a G over A. And this has a very suspended kind of sound. And then we go to an F over G, which is also a very suspended sound. Over these chords, for the G over A, there's a couple ways we can think about it. One of the basic ways we can think about it is using an A mixolydian scale. All those notes would work. But we can also break it down simply into an A major triad and a G major triad. So we can play around with that kind of language over this chord. And we can do the same thing going down a whole step to that F over G. We can think both in terms of the mixolydian scale, in this case the G mixolydian scale, but we can also think in terms of those triads, a G major triad and an F major triad. And then from that point, we go into an A chord, more specifically an A7 kind of sound. So the A mixolydian scale would be good here. And then finally into the tonic, or the D. And of course here you can use a D major scale. Sometimes it's also effective in there to throw in the fourth degree and have a kind of sus sound resolving to the major third. So now that we looked at some general approaches to soloing on this tune, let's take a look actually at Pat's solos. I should mention though that all of the devices I talked about previously, like the pentatonic scales and the Lydian scales and so on, I talked about those because those I see as sort of the basis of what Pat is using in his solos. Of course, Pat embellishes and expands upon these ideas. If we look at the original solo from 1976, we can see that Pat is primarily using scale and chord tones here. There's very little in the way of chromaticism. Of course, he does so in a very lyrical and melodic way. He has an incredible sense of phrasing, a very call and response type of style. Check out a couple examples here of the type of melodic phrasing I'm talking about. And check out this very kind of call and response type approach. Now in the solo from 2000, some 20 years later, Pat's harmonic vocabulary has expanded, of course. At the heart of it, he's still building upon the same kind of scales, but he's incorporating a lot more chromaticism and other type devices here. You can see right off the bat from bar 1 that he starts off with a chromatic line before getting into some Lydian material. And throughout the solo, he peppers his phrasing with chromaticism here and there. Now looking at the 1976 solo, one of the things that Pat does a lot is he often anticipates the coming chord change. For example, let's take a look just at the second bar. In the last beat of this bar, you can see that he anticipates the coming B flat major 7 sharp 4 chord. And in many spots throughout the solo, he anticipates the next chord change, often just about a beat before the chord change comes. You can see this in the 6th bar of the solo as well, where again he anticipates the coming B flat major 7 sharp 4 chord. And you can see this again in the 4th bar of the 2nd A section. Before the D major chord arrives, he anticipates that chord with the F sharp and G leading into the A. Now, he also uses this kind of anticipation in the solo from 2000 as well. If you take a look at the second chorus, for example, in the second bar, you can see that he's starting to anticipate that B flat major 7 sharp 4 chord a couple beats before it arrives. And with this kind of anticipation, it's almost like you're creating a blend from the harmony you're coming from into the harmony you're going into. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the rhythmic stuff that Pat is doing. Let's look at the solo from 2000. Let's focus on the first 4 or 5 bars of the second A section. What you can see here is that he uses sort of a mix of 8th notes and 16th notes. And in doing so, he's creating this kind of staggered feel. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but that's kind of the way that I think of it. It's almost as if you were walking at a certain pace, and then you sped up really quickly for a few seconds, and then you slowed back down, and then you sped up again, and so on. And it creates this kind of staggered, jolted kind of feeling. But it's very playful at the same time and very exciting rhythmically. And he uses the same staggered rhythmic feel in a few places in the solo. So as I mentioned before, in the solo from 1976, the notes that Pat uses in his lines, they all pretty much stick to the scale tones and the chord tones. Now in the later solo from 2000, he's using a more expanded harmonic concept. There are a couple interesting places in particular that we can look at in the solo. Both of these occur in the final A section of the first chorus. Let's take a look at what he does on the G major 7 sharp 11 chord. If we look at the actual notes, we can see that all those notes fall in A major scale. But really what I think he's doing here is he's playing off the concept of the perfect fifth. As you can see, he starts his solo on the note A and then goes up to an E, which is a perfect fifth. And then he goes from a C sharp to a G sharp, another perfect fifth. And then he goes to an F sharp up to a C sharp, another perfect fifth. And what's interesting about this is that the melody of the tune is based on the interval of a perfect fifth, at least the very opening line of the tune. And in fact, many of the tunes from the Bright Size Life album, the original album, they're all based on different intervals as far as I know. So even though this line, it does sound somewhat outside of the chord changes, I think especially because of the G sharp against the G major chord, because of the smart way that it uses this interval of a perfect fifth, it seems to have its own logic to it, which makes it make sense. Another thing he does, which I find interesting, is before the next chorus, on the D chord, before the G major 7 sharp 4, he does a run up to that G major 7 with a whole tone scale, a D whole tone scale. So it's almost like he's looking at that tonic D major chord here as a D7 chord, like the 5 chord of the coming G major 7 chord. And often a whole tone scale can be substituted in a way for a dominant 7th chord, at least if you want to create an outside kind of sound. So thanks for checking out this video. If you'd like to see more content like this, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.